What is up, guys? Stu here, and welcome back to, I can't believe I'm still saying it, another review from the London Film Festival. Fucking hell. I'm this close to just changing the channel name to London Film Festival Reviews or some shit, because that's all I'm churning out at the moment, but it's because I saw a lot of films in the week and a half that the film festival was on back in October. I guess, call me a completionist. I want to get all the reviews out. So that is exactly why it may now be November, but I'm still doing reviews for films I saw a month ago at the film festival. But the beauty of it is that it's still technically early. What is this? The School of Witchcraft and Wizardry when Garden Leviosa on. Let's just get on with it. And the next one I saw at the festival was Marielle Heller's latest film, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Now, Marielle Heller is a great director. You may recognize her as being the director and writer of a recent film called Can You Ever Forgive Me? Got a whole load of buzz when it came out last year. Picked up a couple of awards here and there. Everyone, good, nice. So I was very excited to see what she do this one, not least because she's a fantastic director, but also because Tom Hanks is in this. It's basically a biopic of Fred Rogers, who you might need a little bit of schooling on if, like me, you're a Brit, because I never grew up watching this guy, but over in the States, I believe he was like the shit. Like, if you were a kid and you were watching TV and learning shit through the TV and watching, you're probably watching Mr. Rogers, right? I guess he's like the American equivalent for us Brits of someone like... Oh, I've got to be really fucking careful where I go with this, haven't I? Just listing through my head are the ones that didn't end up being terrible monsters. Fuck it, it's like he's Jimmy Savile if he was actually a lovely person and not a horrible monster. Like, if you thought, oh, that Jimmy bloke seems too lovely, let's check out what he's doing, and then you dug into him further and you just found out he actually is just an angel. Just a lovely person. That's what, by all accounts, Mr. Rogers was to the American audience. But this film follows a journalist played by Matthew Rhys who's tasked with writing a piece about Mr. Rogers and just learning a little bit about why he is so great. And that Mr. Rogers here is played by Tom Hanks. And I gotta be honest, it's a really, really wonderful little gem of a film. Now, it doesn't take a Sherlock amongst you to realise that clearly I don't really have much of a connection with Mr. Rogers before this film. As a Brit, we didn't get him every morning on our TV, so depending on where you're from, you'll probably have more of a connection to this. So I can imagine if you're someone that grew up watching Mr. Rogers, you're going to be much more involved in this film. But even as someone that's never really watched much of Mr. Rogers' stuff as a child, I still was able to get a lot from this film. And I think that's certainly a testament to how great Marielle Heller is as a director here. She does another cracking job. She seems to be taking stories that could have been done in a wholly conventional, typical way, and just makes enough interesting changes and enough flourishes to make it feel interesting. And that, for me, in this film came in the way she looks at the kind of sets of this children's TV show and blending that into real life through the character of Matthew Rhys here. It makes for some really interesting moments where we have our characters sort of in the world of Mr. Rogers, but also in the real world, and they're really effective. And there's a lot of moments like that which sort of keep it a level above that kind of typical smushy, saccharine, cheesy, I'm gonna cry my eyes out drama. But that being said, she also knows how to play into the conventions of a film like that, like we come to expect, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for this film, because by all accounts, Mr. Rogers was this kind of perfect human being, and so it kind of works. But what was most interesting for me is that actually this film sort of pivots away from being entirely about Tom Hanks's version of Mr. Rogers and does a lot more to look at the character that Matthew Rhys is playing in the film and his position and his situation. And I thought that was really refreshing. It could have just been, look how amazing Tom Hanks is. Every scene is Tom Hanks being amazing. I'm saying it now, but I definitely would have watched that anyway. But it instead chose to use Mr. Rogers and all of that stuff and Tom Hanks's performance as a way of getting into a character outside of that. And I think it was all the more effective for that. And the story that the characters end up going through, while it can sometimes feel a little bit predictable, I did find to be wholly effective and really, really moving when it needed to be, and just a very wholesome sort of message to this one, a very wholesome film. That's what this film is. It's a wholesome film that you want to watch to kind of feel things, get those feelings out, and just feel a little bit better about humanity and about things in life, which seems like the perfect thing to come from a film about someone like Mr. Rogers. But we do have to talk about Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, because it's Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, and he's fucking amazing. He is. I mean, was there ever anyone else that couldn't capture all the things that seem to be so incredible about Mr. Rogers on screen. I don't think there is. I don't need to tell you how much of a caring and warm person Tom Hanks seems like he is in real life, but also just how warm and caring he comes across in everything he does on screen. That all translates perfectly to this character, and I think Tom Hanks does a brilliant job of not making this character feel like a cliche, and that applies to the direction and writing and on top of that as well. But in the performances, it'd be so easy to be like, oh, he's this super happy person up front, but he's hiding behind a mask and he actually has a lot of troubles. Oh wow, that's totally unique, except hang on a second, it fucking isn't, is it? But immediately Tom Hanks's performance is just like, no, don't worry about that, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it right. But I was also really impressed with Matthew Rhys, who I haven't seen in anything for quite some time, but I will always remember as one of the siblings from Brothers and Sisters. Anyone remember that show? No? Just me? It was a nice surprise in the way that he ended up being much more of a prominent part of this film than Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. And I think the two of them, when they're on screen together, works really, really well. Ultimately, I felt a lot for this dude, and I also felt a lot for the relationship that he was building with Mr. Rogers. And I suppose that's the sort of element of this film which I mentioned felt slightly predictable. It's like, oh, he's reluctant to meet him at first. He doesn't really like him. It's like, we know where this is going to go. They're going to form a relationship of some sort, and Mr. Rogers is going to teach him some shit about life. Even knowing that, it still works. So I don't think that's really a criticism. It's like, yeah, cool. We knew it was going there. It still did it well. If there's really anything that held this film back for me, it does simply just come down again to the fact that I don't really have much of a connection with Mr. Rogers and the TV show that it was a part of and that whole world. It's an annoying criticism because it's sort of one I expected. I mean, this is definitely for a certain audience. I think it's going to play much better for American audiences because of that. And it almost feels wrong to criticize a film for that because it's not the film's fault that I didn't watch Mr. Rogers growing up. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel like that occasionally got in the way of this film for me. I was thinking to myself, I feel like this scene would have made a lot more sense and made a lot more impact if I knew Mr. Rogers growing up. And also, maybe it's the cynic in me, maybe it's because I'm a Brit, maybe it's because a lot of child entertainers from way back when ended up being monsters. No matter how perfect this guy was by all accounts in real life, I can't help but feel a little bit cynical at first. I'm just like, there has to be something behind it. No one is this nice. But I do feel this film sort of tackles that by having a character that is also similarly quite reluctant to accept that this guy can be that nice. So it works overall, but there are definitely points, particularly in the first half of this film, where I was like, this is just coming off as too nice, and that comes off as quite cliche and over the top in the film. But I'm not entirely sure how much of that to call a criticism because it seems like he was that nice in real life. Aside from those things, one of the other things I think held this film back is that I genuinely think it could have benefited from being a little bit longer. For me at least, it really felt like we were building something and getting to somewhere, and then it suddenly was just like, okay, yeah, we'll wrap it up. Cool, we're done. It's not that it's really missing any pieces of the story here, but it certainly feels like there's a little bit between the second and third act that feels like it's assuming things rather than exploring things. But that being said, overall I was satisfied with the way this film ended and where the story ended up going. As far as biopics I've seen in recent years goes, this definitely does feel like one of the more interesting and emotionally satisfying ones. As I said, I think it's going to resonate a lot stronger for American audiences, but there's enough in here to enjoy if you don't, like me, know much about Mr. Rogers before going to see it. But what about you guys? Have you seen A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood? A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? British man attempts American theme songs. #1. Watch this go viral. Whatever you thought about it, let me know in comments down below. We'll have a big old discussion, and I'm hoping it ends up just becoming a big, yes, we love Tom Hanks fest. But as usual, if you did enjoy this video and you want to see me talk about more shit, consider clicking subscribe. Really helps me out. It's the best way to support the channel. Just subscribe and like whenever you can. I'm very busy at the moment, so it's not going to be daily reviews again, but I'll be back shortly with another review from the festival for you guys. But until next time, stay beautiful, mother truckers.